Imagine the alien girl's face when the drop pod stung, and she laughed that she would marry the human if he guessed her true name. Within the claustrophobic space across the contested areas of the outer ring, its metal hull burnt by atmospheric, ingress in the weak emergency lighting. Liriana's sunset-colored skin appeared to shimmer, and her silvery white hair fell in a cascade. As she manipulated the navigation controls over her shoulders with practiced accuracy, "Your human names are so predictably chubby," she added, grinning playfully as she turned to face her co-pilot. The man sitting there, James Michael John, is so uninteresting and uninspired. Commander Nathan Reed, a former Terran Alliance Special Forces operative, arched an eyebrow across from her. His close-cropped reddish hair and light stubble framed a man who was easily agitated. Over his sleeveless shirt, the black tactical vest did nothing to conceal the face that had seen its fair share of combat. His arms strong firmness as he folded them across his chest. "And I assume that Ajandari names are the pinnacle of inventiveness," he responded in a deep voice with just enough irony to convince. Their relationship had always been strictly professional, sometimes even tense, as Liriana narrowed her eyes. During this cooperative reconnaissance operation, representatives of their respective countries exercised caution. Liriana's deep green combat suit gripped him, despite the clear attraction that boiled underneath their exchanges. Her athletic physique, the fine technological details along its seams, and the strategically placed, dimly lit areas Nathan had first questioned the design decision because it left her thighs, shoulders, and abdomen exposed, unfeasible. But I later discovered that it was customary for Shindari warriors to use my true name, Liriana. Continued to reflect as she looked out the viewport at the sun-drenched desert vistas below, saying, "This is a song of the my birth stars possess the celestial body's harmonic resonance, bodies that lined up as I took my first breath." She turned back to face him, and I swear, her smile changed to one of mischief. By our old law, if a male human could guess it, I would be Nathan, who is devoted to him for life, shocked her with a gentle smile. Normally, Nathan is quiet and focused on the mission. Something changed in his gaze, a flash of insight that caused Liriana's self-assurance to falter, and he opened his mouth and created a musical rhythm that shimmered like far-off starlight, a complex, multi-layered sound, varying in perfect harmonic intervals that should have been impossible for human vocal cords to generate. Liriana's mouth opened slightly, her eyes dilated in disbelief, and her sunset turned a darker orange. Skin how? Unable to take her eyes off of him, she muttered, "How do you know?" That. As the drop pod continued to descend toward the neutral zone, the question hovered between them. Suddenly, the ostensibly routine supplies they were transporting for the combined Terran-Jandari station appeared to be far less more significant than the secret Nathan reportedly held before responding to proximity alerts that blared across. Nathan's attention instantly went to the control's proximity alert in the cockpit. He said, "We have company," with no longer any fun in his voice. Though her eyes were still filled with doubts, Liriana abruptly returned to her professional demeanor at 2-1 without transmitting any identification codes. "Pirates," Nathan already proposed. Liriana coldly retorted, "Or worse, planning escape. Moves. This sector has seen a rise in Draxian activity. They would be eager to obtain our shipment." The moment of personal discovery passed as they readied themselves for possible battle, but they did not forget anything. A new relationship had fundamentally changed between them, one that would unavoidably reappear once the current threat. "Hang on," he said, as Nathan's fingertips slid across the control panel. "This is going to get interesting," Liriana said as she pulled the pod into a sharp descent. As she turned on the weapon systems, her lips formed a resolute smile. As Nathan pushed the little craft to its destination, the desert below rushed up to meet them, as it always does when humans are involved, bounds, making it difficult for their assailants to match the forceful maneuver. Any secrets they shared must wait till survival takes precedence. The drop pod skimmed over the rough rock. Neutral zone formations, their engines laboring, to keep up with Nathan's forceful, evasive maneuvers behind them. Liriana indicated a tight canyon where the unidentified craft was having difficulty matching their drop path. Because of the magnetic interference from those mineral deposits, we can lose them in a dark little cove beneath an overhanging rock. Nathan nodded and slew the craft in a sharp direction toward the natural shelter. The ferromagnetic material should conceal our later. He maneuvered the pod into the hidden area with such accuracy that even Liriana, who had seen it, was amazed. His piloting abilities on earlier trips, they sat in utter quiet, keeping an eye on their. Nathan muttered, "They're circling," to the pursuers on the tactical display, but there was no need for silence. Liriana let out a breath she hadn't realized she was holding, saying, "Looks like they're not sure where we went." Typical pirate tactics include searching for an hour or two before moving on to easier prey in the small area of the immediate threat passed. The cockpit felt considerably smaller, leaving them alone with the unresolved stress from previously. Liriana's eyes strayed to Nathan, who was intently studying the sensor data, saying, "We should conserve shutting down non-essential systems," he replied. "Power. The extraction team wouldn't get to us until tomorrow at the earliest." The emergency lighting in the cockpit dimmed, softly shadowing Nathan's features in the smaller light. Liliana's skin became more intense, nearly red, and she at last uttered, "Will, you break the weighted silence and tell me how you discovered my real name, Nathan, via the control?" Nevertheless, his face was unreadable as he turned to face her. "Would you believe me if I told you that I heard it in a dream?" She gave a bland response, and he leaned back as his lips curled into a half smile. "Considering her, I was a part of a joint Terran Shindari 3 years ago. A diplomatic reception was held for your father's operation on the Proxima station. I don't recall seeing you." Delegation Liliana's eyes widened. "If I had been a security detail stationed behind the scenes, you wouldn't have seen his eyes." Grew aloof from the recollection of the new trade agreement's ceremonial naming ceremony, where your father spoke your as part of the blessing. Lana said, "That's impossible. No." After hearing a Shindari genuine name just once, the human ear might pick up on its harmonic complexity. Nathan's countenance became solemn, with the connotation that, "You're right, a normal human couldn't." As Liana examined his face, she hung between them and asked, "You're not normal, are you?" "I was," he acknowledged, using neural augmentation auditory processing as part of a classified program. "They altered you, Lana, so that I can hear and perfectly replicate frequencies that are outside of the usual human range." Couldn't conceal her surprise because in Sinindari tradition, such changes would be viewed as sacrilegious. He volunteered. Earth required soldiers who could work well with extraterrestrial friends, who understood their priority was given to languages, even those thought to be unattainable by humans. Liriana reconciled her cultural ideals with her increasing interest in this human as she pondered this discovery. "So you knew?" Nathan gently nodded. "I did, but I never brought up our tradition." He waved between them, saying, "I merely slipped out when you confronted me, and now we're bound," she whispered quietly, the ramifications weighing heavily on her. The drop pods, which were people's oldest laws, united their souls in a relationship deeper than any marriage contract. The small space's environmental system hummed softly as the temperature outside dropped and the sun fell. As Nathan checked the sensors, he noticed that the temperature was noticeably lowering and that life support was conserving. If he hesitated, we should remain near him for warmth. Liriana felt her. She acknowledged that there was a flutter of something new in her chest, a mixture of practical uncertainty and anticipation. She got up to join him, their bodies clumsily fitting together, and they both knew it was more than that. She was taken aback by the warmth of Nathan's human body as his arm initially went around her shoulders in the little area. "Your people run hot," she said, unconsciously drawing herself closer. The desert night descended and said, "And yours are surprisingly cool to the touch," in a low voice close to her ear. Liriana found herself following the stars that appeared in the viewport above their concealed sanctuary. Stars. Her eyes alerting her to each point of connection between their bodies. According to Zindari custom, she stated softly that when two souls are joined, they spend. The Nathan's hand found hers in the dim light on our first night together, under the stars, as we learned each other's rhythms. Is that what we're... I never thought my soul binding would occur in a drop pod while evading pirates, but she acknowledged that she might be accomplishing it. Humans have a phrase that goes, "Life rarely gives you what you expect." His gentle laugh echoed from his chest against her. However, Lana occasionally responded, turning to face him. Their faces are now just a few inches apart. Provides you with what you require. The tension between them changed, becoming inescapable and electrifying, as with the stars spinning overhead and peril lurking beyond their haven, Nathan and Liliana had to cross. Limits neither had foreseen when their mission started yet. As light broke over the interior of the desert environment is painted in amber and gold tones over the rocky ground. Nathan was initially temporarily confused by the weight of Liriana on his chest when he woke up from the drop pod. After changing positions that night, her body was now curled into his, and her silver hair was spread across his arm, creating an intimate. Their position triggered a primordial response in him, and their chat the night before had delved beyond terrain neither had expected, leading to a relationship that went beyond their work relationship. They had communicated through their hot looks and lingering touches, but had not spoken directly. Liriana stirred her eyes more than words could, and for a brief while, she appeared happy in their position. Awareness came back, and she sat up fast, her skin flushed in the sunset. "A deeper orange," she said. The temperature stabilized. Nathan nodded, allowing her to continue. He groped for the sensor controls under the guise that I should see if our friends from yesterday had moved on. But the communication system sprang to life with an urgent emergency signal before his fingers touched it. The automatic system announced Priority Alpha in a broadcast from Outpost Helios, and they looked at each other anxiously. Commander Valerian the Terran appeared in a static-filled hologram as Nathan pressed the message button. The voice of the officer in charge of the joint outpost to all allied vessels came through in the background outpost, strained and interrupted by gunfire. Draxian forces are attacking Helios. We are outnumbered, and there is an explosion. Disrupted the transmission and asked for help right now because my essential research was in danger. I repeat my critical research at danger that the transmission would go out suddenly, leaving them in startled stillness. Nathan stated coldly where we were going, and the look on Lana's face had turned pale, nearly ashen. "Nathan, you must understand," that she reached for the secure area under her seat, entering a complicated code pertaining to our goods and the reasons I was chosen for this. When the compartment slid open, it was discovered that the normal supply containers were not what they were meant to be, transporting, but an advanced stasis unit with iridescent vials. She described fluid genetic stabilizers in an unusual way. "I don't understand." Nathan frowns, "and I feel vulnerable." Liriana inhaled deeply. "I was chosen by the Sindari High Council to participate in their experiments with accelerated reproductive cycles. She was hesitant to enroll in the program because of my genetic compatibility with human comprehension," gradually appeared on Nathan's face. "You're claiming that they purposefully matched us because we're..." She acknowledged that I was genetically suitable and that my reproductive cycle had been artificially. In order to guarantee that any conception is viable, these stabilizers must be improved. Her eyes met his. "Difficult, but they didn't anticipate that you would be aware of my real name, or that we would become soulmates. So this..." She affirmed that the goal of the trip was to create the first feasible Shindari human hybrid, not only to gather supplies. Nathan's tactical mind connected the components and the Draxians under controlled conditions as he absorbed this knowledge. Liriana stated that they had traditionally opposed cross-species collaboration and would assault the outpost if they discovered the program. The ramifications weighed heavily on them, and the attack wasn't arbitrary. It was directed at Nathan, remarked, already reaching for the ignition. We have to help them with the very research that brought them together. Sequence. Liriana grabbed his wrist. Nathan, you must comprehend if we get there. What it means to us is that her soul-binding, piercing look was steadfast. In addition to these genetic changes, if we were to have a sexual relationship, conception would be, almost certainly, there was an unspoken possibility in the air between them, Nathan. He put his palm over hers and said, "Is that what you want?" "Volunteered for the program," she acknowledged, but I didn't anticipate that she would find it difficult to express her feelings. Nathan's face softened as he realized that he wanted it to be more than just a scientific process. Up to follow the lines of her face, his touch respectful where I'm from. It should be an act of love, not obligation, to bring a kid into the world, especially where I. Leaning into his touch, Liana responded, "Duty and love are not mutually." As they approached, the desert sun rose higher, illuminating the cockpit with golden light. It started as an unintentional binding had developed into a relationship that defied their expectations. "We should reach the outpost in 3 hours, Nathan stated, referring to the expectations of their various cultures. "Pulling away grudgingly to make the drop pod ready for launch, but we'll deal with whatever occurs there together." Liliana. As the engines screamed to life and the pod began to launch, she completed placing her hand over his. Pulled from where it had been concealed, they both realized that their objective had changed forever, and they were no longer only ambassadors of their governments, but they were deeper partners connected by historical. The pods raced over the desert toward Outpost Helios, where neither tradition nor the future had anticipated. Outpost Helios loomed, but there was also danger, answers, and maybe an opportunity to define their relationship on their own terms. A once proud building that is now partially engulfed in flames drops in front of them. As Nathan led them to a backup landing pad away from the main one, the pod's sensors picked up intermittent weapon fire. According to reports, combat Draxian ships on the eastern boundary of Lana scanned the tactical display and appeared to have Nathan's jaw clenched as they broke into the main laboratory wing, which would house the genetic research. Landed with an unexpected thump, the pod's covert systems turning on to conceal their approach, while equipped with their sidearms and the valuable stabilizer cargo, they swiftly navigate the outpost's life signs and emergency access tunnels. As they turned a corner, Liriana said, "Human and Zindare signatures." She checked her scanner. Nathan tapped the connection panel after seeing a sealed laboratory door and saying, "Commander Reed Taran, Special Forces, we got your distress. Call." Following a stressful time, a small group of haggard people emerged through the door. With his uniform ripped and smoldering, survival leader Valerian coldly nodded at there. A female Shindari scientist with a stained lab coat was standing next to him. When Dr. Marina Lana saw what seemed to be blue blood, she gasped in recognition. The older Shindari woman said, "You're barely alive, scientist." And the Draxans arrived. They suddenly knew exactly what to aim for, and as Lana handed over the stasis device, Nathan locked the door behind them. Dr. Marina looked at them with apparent relief after giving them the genetic stabilizers. Her gaze moved between Nathan and Lana, observing their positive interactions. Lana's skin flushed when they were close to one another. "How did you?" "According to Marina, your aura patterns are coordinated and obvious to anybody who knows what to look for." Glanced to Nathan, who nodded when you mentioned her real name. It wasn't a question. Commander Valerian intervened, "But we can talk about personal issues later, okay? Prior to the Draxians extracting the central database, which contains all of the program's data, we must now safeguard it." Liriana gave me some information about this program that Nathan requested, but I feel like there is more. After Marina and Valerian exchanged looks, the lab became quiet, save for the distant sounds of Lana, the combat subject. Isn't limited to human compatibility, Marina eventually stated that she's been especially designed to create children with improved telepathic bridge abilities, skills to mend more quickly and live longer, that could bring our species together in ways we've only imagined, Liliana's subject. You informed me that I was a volunteer candidate, and you were. Although Marina insisted, you were also the result of generations of genetic research for which your parents were chosen. Compatibility traits. During embryonic development, Nathan optimized your genetic structure. I was created for this, she replied, placing a calm hand on Lana's shoulder and sensing the stress radiating through her body. Flatly to be attached to a human and make a superchild of some sort. A nearby explosion shook the laboratory, confirming that what you do with it has always been up to you. Valerian looked at the surveillance camera and saw that they had broken through the secondary barrier, sending equipment plummeting to the ground. The evacuation shuttles Nathan requested were destroyed in the initial attack, so we may have 20 minutes until they arrive. Our only hope is to hold out until reinforcements arrive from Proxima Station, which could be days, Valerian said grimly. Marina stated that Nathan used military precision to determine how much food and water they had. One of the other survivors said. Liriana met Nathan's gaze and said, "For 3 days, maybe 4, if we ration wisely." Unspoken dialogue between them as they are in peril with their uncertainty over their future had only made the disclosure of Liriana's genetic tinkering more intense, hadn't lessened his emotions. On the contrary, it highlighted her incredible fortitude and tenacity. Nathan determined that in order to establish a position that can be defended, we should wait for assistance to arrive. The auxiliary lab has strengthened walls, a proposed Marina power source, and equipment that could be helpful as they, gathering moving items. Nathan drew Liriana aside. "Are you all right?" Her sunset-colored complexion had slightly paled when I asked her quietly, but her eyes remained unwavering. "I've spent my entire life watching orders meeting standards and learning that I was actually created with a purpose." She shook her head. "That's a lot to process whatever you were made for." Nathan murmured in a deep, quiet voice. Their eyes locked, the air between them charged, and what counts is what you decide. It's possible that the soul binding had forged a bond between them, but what emerged was something more profound. Anything that neither genetic programming nor the government could prescribe. We should relocate. Lana stated that even though she didn't try to distance herself from him, we might still. With the pressure of their situation pressing down on them, they got ready to move to the auxiliary lab. Outnumbered, their supplies were running low and their secrets were out, yet in the middle of the crisis, they had discovered something neither had anticipated, a decision that was genuinely unique to them. A night descended over Outpost Helios. The auxiliary lab had established itself as a defensible position with reinforced walls, adding an unsettling silence to the beleaguered facility. Despite the devastation elsewhere, the survivors maintained their systems with walls and a separate electrical grid, had set up a guard duty cycle in which Nathan took the first watch while the others tried to get some rest. Liriana couldn't sleep because her mind was always racing with the day's discoveries about her genetically modified soul binding. She paced the tiny, isolated alcove that had once been a beach, knowing that Nathan and she were now in a hazardous situation. Nathan's voice said, "You should be resting," from the researcher's office, which had been transformed into temporary sleeping quarters. He had taken off his tactical vest and was standing in the doorway, his powerful body silhouetted in only his sleeveless shirt. "So should you," she said under the weak emergency lights. After all, isn't Valerian supposed to be on watch right now? Couldn't go to sleep either. So Nathan entered the room and let the A's soon as the door closed behind him. The room felt more private and smaller. "I can't stop thinking about it." Lana nodded, acutely aware of his proximity. "Does Marina's statement, that I was made for this and that we were meant to be together, alter how you feel?" Nathan inquired in a calm, quiet voice, and she thought about it while examining his face in the gentle blue light. Of the emergency light's negative, she eventually responded, which, if anything, increases. My Nathan grew closer as I was resolved to follow my own path and demonstrate that everything they created in my emotions was mine. She was able to feel, the warmth emanating from his human flesh up close. What are the sensations she named? Not her own name this time, just the name she used among others, but something about his lips made her tremble. I felt just as strong when you revealed my real identity, she said. I was afraid. I never let myself realize how much I already was, not because I didn't want to be linked to you. With his thumb following the curve of her cheekbone, Nathan's hand lifted to cup her face, sending a stream of her body's feelings were intensified by her Shindari nervous system, which processed tactile data. In contrast to people in my society, she went on, her voice almost audible, compared to a physical union, soul binding is seen to be the most profound bond between two creatures. Nathan said, and in mine, bringing her closer. Physical union is an expression. Using that connection, the invisible can be made visible by touching their breaths and foreheads. The tension between them, which had been growing ever since that moment in the drop pod when he had changed everything and revealed her true name, cresting like a wave, ready to Lana whispered, her hands, moving to his chest. Break if we do this. You can tell what his heartbeat might indicate by feeling it through the thin linen. And given my biology, you can probably guess what it will mean. I know that Nathan's eyes were strong and black, and I don't fear that future. Their lips first, met tentatively, but if it's with you, the final barrier between them vanished with those words. As the disparities in their physiologies became more certain, unexpected feelings of her colder flesh against his warmth, the unusual but seductive flavors and textures, what following the meticulous removal of barriers, they discovered one another that went beyond their individual species. Both mental and physical, the quiet direction, the soft giggles at sudden disparities, the exclamations of Nathan treated her with a respect that Liriana could relate to, and she took joy in the unexpected, parallels throughout it all. Why humans had gained such esteem among the stars despite having a shorter history. Unlike more rational species, they viewed the cosmos and one another with compassion and passion. In the aftermath, races frequently lacked and were entangled, in a tangle on the narrow cot. Liriana stroked designs on Nathan's chest, admiring how natural they were against the browned human flesh of his skin. Nathan whispered quietly, "Do you think it happened?" As it felt to be with him in this manner. "There's a method to find out," she said, his palm protectively covering her abdomen, the medical scanner in the main. "With my improved reproductive system in particular, the lab area is sensitive enough to identify fertilization practically instantly." They dressed discreetly, exchanging lingering touches and covert smiles that revealed their newfound closeness. The primary lab was Liriana activated the other survivors, who had gone to their own temporary shelter for the night. Her face was softly illuminated by the holographic display of the medical scanner, which completed the scan in a matter of seconds. After the results were shown, neither of them said anything for a while before Lana said, "Well?" With a tone of wonder and fear, she said, "It appears the geneticist understood their purpose after all." Nathan stepped behind her, putting his arms around her waist and resting his chin on her shoulder, while they both gazed at the successful embryonic conception confirmation that was floating in front of them. He murmured, his breath warm against his chest, "Are you okay with this?" Development had already sped beyond normal bounds. With renewed resolve, Liriana turned in his arms and faced him. "This child may have been a part of someone else's plan, but now it's our future, our choice, and the child's." They were reminded of their vulnerable position, trapped under siege, with decreasing supplies, by the distant sound of weapons fire. Supplies, an ambiguous timetable for rescue, and now they brought a fresh life that both governments and the Draxians would find it invaluable to assault. "Therefore, we need to get you both," of Nathan yelled. "Get out of here." His protective instincts clearly heightened, warning that reinforcements might not arrive in time. Liriana nodded, her tactical mind already considering potential scenarios that could result in an emergency at the outpost. Valerian said that all escape boats were destroyed, including the escape pods intended for crucial research evacuation. Although the shuttles were Liriana rectified, the pods are now smaller and more stealthy. They're not widely known, but Nathan's eyes lit up with hope as he saw Level 3, Section D, but will require authorization codes which Nathan's Marina may possess. Completed, Liriana paused and put her hand down as they got ready to share their plan and news with the others. "When I joked that if you guess my name, I'll be bonded to you," she responded with a laugh over her belly, where their child now developed. Nathan's smile was equal to the quiet giggle that I never thought would result from it. The care and perseverance I displayed this morning resulted in shocking developments. Liriana gasped as she woke up, reaching for her stomach, where a substantial lump had developed overnight. Nathan had been sleeping next to her and was suddenly awake, asking, "What's wrong?" He questioned, his features etched with anxiety. "Hab," she said, exposing her midriff by pulling up her suit. What should have a little but noticeable bulge that had before been hardly noticeable was now obvious. Something wasn't there the previous evening. Nathan gazed, his face displaying a mix of wonder and fear. "Is this atypical for Shindari?" Liriana answered, her voice tense with concern despite the expedited gestation, which is unprecedented. They quickly sought out Dr. Marina and discovered. When the older Shindari noticed Liriana's condition, her eyes widened. She was already working in the temporary medical area. Lana was led to the examination table by the ancestors she inhaled. The scanner buzzed when it crossed Lana's genetic changes, suggesting that they may be more aggressive than we anticipated. Abdomen displaying a holographic representation of the Marina's growing embryo. As she examined the readings, her countenance became more worried. The fetal development rate is roughly 40. She declared that if things continue as they are, you will reach full term in days, months days, Nathan repeated, placing his hand over Liana's and giving her a light squeeze. The hybridization process is triggering accelerated development protocols that were designed, Marina said with a gloomy nod, to only activate under carefully monitored circumstances. She pointedly examined the stasis unit that contained the genetic. The purpose of stabilizers was to control the process, but soul binding has produced a biological catalyst that we weren't expecting. "Can you slow it down?" Lion asked, attempting to maintain her tone. "Stable. I can try using the stabilizers to moderate it, but I can't completely stop it." Marina started getting an injectable ready, which should help keep the development pace safe, but we must get you to A's. The Marina delivered the stabilizer. Commander Valerian attended a suitable medical center within the following 72 hours. The lab, his face glum, he stopped to observe the sight, his eyes. "Congratulations are in order," he murmured, lingering on Leon's altered appearance. "We must evacuate," Nathan said firmly, although his tone lacked affection. "Liriana." Valerian's jaw tensed when he mentioned the emergency escape pods, which are only used for vital research supplies. "According to your own, she is important research material." Nathan shot back and instantly regretted his word choice. Government's Lana gave him a tight grip, realizing that he didn't view her that way. Valerian let out a deep sigh. "In any case, I just got the last word from Proxima Command that there won't be any reinforcements." As the ramifications set in, the crowd went quiet. "What do you mean?" asked one of the both governments have classified this outpost as expendable, Valerian said, when other survivors demanded, in order to prevent diplomatic issues with the Draxian, they are vehemently denying any knowledge of the genetic program. Confederation has been rejected, and Nathan's military education has already begun to weigh his options. "There are only 2 pods, Valerian, so we use the escape pods to get everyone outside. Seen, each built to accommodate a maximum of 3 passengers and a small amount of goods. Have 8 survivors, so we send 2 missions," Liriana said, squirming a little as she experienced yet another odd. Valerian shook his head at the flutter of movement in her development that should have taken weeks, but happened in hours. The second pod would be intercepted by the Draxians before it could launch, since the launch sequence activates an automated beacon. Remove the tension from the room as they discuss their alternatives, and Nathan drew Liriana aside to his he. Insisted that you and the first pod be on it in a quiet, anxious voice. Baby Liliana's sunset skin buddy, I won't be leaving you behind. Nathan stated, I need you, in a kind but serious tone. Our child needs at least one parent to survive. What had started as an unintentional binding had changed, and she was surprised by the unfiltered emotion in her voice. There must have been another reason why their intimate chat was cut off, something she couldn't bear to lose. The entire building shook with a strong tremor, and warning lights flashed as the security system detected a serious Valerian declared, looking at the monitors. They broke through the eastern perimeter, adding, we may have 2 hours. Marina walked up to them before they got to this part, her face determined. I've prepared a modified dose of stabilizers, which should let the pregnancy proceed at a reasonable pace for around 36 hours, she said, handing the injector to Nathan, who acknowledged that she would require specialized care after that. I have a plan, he remarked to the gathering as he tucked the device firmly inside his tactical vest. But it's dangerous, and I'll need everyone's help, he said, outlining his daring plan that combined with deceit, diversion, and well-timed movements. Liriana observed him with expanding appreciation for this aspect of people that had always captivated her, their capacity to overcome insurmountable obstacles with resourcefulness and resolve instead of giving up. It could work. When Nathan was done, Valerian grudgingly acknowledged, but the time would have to be precise, and we'd need to override the pod launch protocols, approach the command center, Marina said, which is presently manned by Draxian forces, another victim noted. Nathan's face stayed assured, and we took it back as a group. As she got ready, Lana had a larger flutter of movement inside herself and covered the expanding swell, in awe of the life that was emerging there. A life that symbolized not only a biological hybrid, but a union created out of desire, something neither government had foreseen. As a challenge, I spoke your real name, and Nathan added softly, coming to stand next to her. I never thought it would result like this. Imagine my face when Liliana smiled and leaned against him. I realized that my joke about marriage will actually happen. Are you sad about it? She turned to face him completely, her eyes reflecting the emergency lights as he inquired with a rare trace of vulnerability in his voice. She put his hand over mine, and even though I'm scared, stressed and pressed for time, I'm not dissatisfied. Some things are worth the risk, like the ventilation shaft in her abdomen where their child grew at an uncontrollable rate. He led the way as they made their painfully slow march toward the command center, which was narrower than Nathan had expected. Liriana was right behind her, and as her pregnancy progressed, her movements became more and more strenuous. As Marina and the surviving staff prepared the escape, Valerian and 2 other survivors followed her. Nathan said, raising his fist in the standard military gesture to halt, "Pods for rapid deployment pull." He could see Draxian soldiers roving the hallway outside the command center through the grating ahead, and they less than anticipated, which was consistent with the transmission they had intercepted and the message they had decoded an hour earlier. The Purists, a rogue Draxian party who resisted any genetic modification, were responsible for the attack. The official Dravican administration had sent a diplomatic vessel to conduct an experiment. Intervention is anticipated to arrive in 3 hours if we can wait until when a diplomatic vessel arrived. Valerian thought that we might all survive, but that required protecting the time was not on their side, and they needed to use the command center to communicate with the arriving spacecraft in Moore. Nathan looked back at Liriana, worried about her pallor, but in more than one manner. Despite the fact that her sunset skin had become an unsettling shade of ash, she nodded. He felt uneasy and didn't trust her at first, but he realized that disputing would be a waste of time. "There are 2 guards at the main entrance," he said. "Instead, I'll divert your attention, Valerian. You and Nathan slipped from the plan with experienced precision. Chase, take the east access point, ventilation shaft into an empty storage space, which in turn set off an alarm in a separate area of the building. As anticipated, One of the Draxian guards left one sentinel to investigate. What was unexpected was Lana's abrupt, strangled gasp as she tried to follow him at the command center door. He turned just as she murmured hurriedly, "Nathan," her voice tight with anguish. "Something's happening." Her abdomen had clearly swelled since they had entered the ventilation system, and she was able to grasp it in time. Stabilizers were failing more quickly than Marina had anticipated, but I believe Liana was able to. Nathan froze in shock as the infant began to breathe uncontrollably. His training began when he had to choose between the woman who had become his world and the task that could save everyone. Through their communication, he informed Valerian about the change in plans and the division of the situation into manageable components. "I'm transporting Liriana to safety while she's in labor, so you go ahead and take the command center negatives, Valerian." Nathan interrupted him right away, saying, "We need you for the breach. The timing is no longer negotiable." He guided Lana back into the ventilation shaft and assisted her in finding the Special Forces commander. They had already passed a separate exit that would have taken them to a secure medical bay, but her respiration had become a fighter under rhythmic control used discipline to manage discomfort. "I'm sorry," she muttered as they moved the objective. "Isn't more significant than you, Nathan." Both of you ended solidly. Valerian's diversion became more dramatic as they almost arrived inside the hospital bay before the building shook with an explosion. The commander's voice said, "Command center, secured," and the communication crackled a moment later than anticipated, said to sound a little exhausted. Most Draxian forces have little resistance, seem to have withdrawn to their ships. Nathan asked the diplomatic ship to assist Lana in getting onto an examination table. When she felt another contraction clearly ripple throughout her abdomen, Valerian affirmed that we were establishing. Nathan felt a wave of comfort upon touch, but it was fleeting as Lana screamed. As her back arched in agony, the automatic systems in the medical facility began to scan her vitals and project, with data showing that the system's embryonic development has reached third trimester equivalent, dispassionately announcing that labor was progressing more quickly and that a birth was impending. Nathan activated his. He held Liriana's hand while they waited. "Calm down, Marina. We need you in Medical Bay 3 right now." As he used his free hand to wipe perspiration from her forehead, her eyes met his, filled with a mix of fear and resolve. She asked to speak with me in between contractions to divert my attention. Nathan, grinning, she brushed her silver hair away from her face. "Did I ever explain why I offered to help with the neurological enhancement program?" She shrugged her head, appreciative of the brief distraction, and I found it fascinating. As a child, I used to listen to recordings of foreign languages taught by xenolinguistics. His thumb made circles on the back of her hand, imitating the noises of many species for hours. I was able to hear and reproduce frequencies that were beyond human range thanks to a military program, but the attention was constantly present. "So when you heard my genuine name," Liriana started, "it was like hearing the most exquisite melody I've ever heard," he concluded. "I committed to memory not due to any particular goal, but rather because I couldn't bear to forget it." Lillian's eyes filled with tears, mostly due to pain and partially due to emotion. "And now you're obligated to me." He smiled and said, "Forever because of it, the best mistake I ever made." Made her heart skip a beat, and in spite of her uneasiness, the door opened and Marina hurried in, evaluating the well. "The stabilizer ought to have lasted longer," she mumbled, getting ready to take more drugs. "May have produced a more potent catalyst than I had thought, as further contraction makes Liriana even more potent." The delivery phase began when the medical scanner beeped urgently, and the machine declared that it had detected hybrid physiology. Usual procedures, Marina's expression became worried about the babies. "The automated systems I have to deliver are being confused by the unique genetic structure." The commander manually activated the facility's communication system as she was getting ready. Valerian's voice reverberating across the speakers alerts all staff to the arrival of the Draxian diplomatic craft. "Has left the facility early and is asking for authorization to dock the purist faction." Both Nathan and Lana looked to one another, with hope, but their brief respite was cut short by a particularly strong contraction that caused Lana to scream. "Pay attention to what's happening here," Marina told the positioning. "The diplomats may wait the next few minutes while she helps with the delivery." Passed in a flurry of intensity as Nathan stayed by while Liana's quickened labor moved at an astonishingly rapid pace. When the anguish became unbearable, she used a tether to pronounce her true name softly in her ear. "One more push," Marina urged her professional self as they grounded her through the sensational storm. Lana's expression briefly broke with delight as she said, "The baby is almost here." She mustered the last of her power. As she bore down one last time, her sunset skin gleaming with effort, the chamber erupted in a new sound. The first cry of, "It's a girl," Marina said of a child who, according to all natural laws, shouldn't be born yet. As she laid the newborn on Lana's bosom, she declared in an emotional voice, "And she's perfect. The infant had skin that changed between human tones and was incredibly little but completely formed. And sunset colors, her exquisite head crowned by strands of silvery white hair. Her eyes, however, were particularly striking when they fluttered open, human-shaped, yet possessing the golden fleck that Nathan muttered to Arak. "She's beautiful." As little fingers, the medical bay door was wrapped around his much larger one, before they could fully comprehend the miracle that was happening in front of them. Commander Valerian and a tall, royal Draxian woman dressed in diplomatic garb waited there as it slid open once more. "Sorry for the interruption," the Draxian murmured in a strangely musical voice for her race. "But I insisted on arriving right away after learning about the fast birth." Her eyes landed on the newborn with, "It's no secret that I am the Draxian Confederation's envoy, Thala. The Duraxian diplomatic craft glided, and I think your child might hold the secret to world peace. Its graceful design, which contrasts sharply with the practical military vessels of both, glides gently across space." Nathan stood at the porthole of their newborn daughter, surrounded by human and Shindari fleets in the special chambers allotted to them, cradled on his bosom while he indicated the soul-containing stars in the distance. He muttered, "Where are my people from?" to the baby, who looked at him with eyes that seemed uncanny for one so young. "And your mother's ancestors are located just past that nebula." Liriana watched from her bed as she initially learned to traverse the stars, her body still recuperating from the fast Ambassador Thala had given them choices, and the previous 12 hours had been a blur of disclosures, a place of refuge on the Draxian homeworld where their daughter would be revered as a sign of solidarity, instead of, it had appeared to be the ideal remedy when examined as a scientific specimen. But Commander Valerian intercepted a coded retrieval. Teams have been sent after receiving a signal from Cinder High Command, had soberly told them that Liriana and the child would be considered government property that needed to be retrieved. The image of Nathan's face at that very moment, the icy rage that changed his normally friendly features. Liriana's spine still tingled as she caught sight of the Protector, who would travel galaxies to keep his family safe. The warrior beneath the diplomat said, "We need to make a choice," Liliana continued gently, bringing Nathan's focus back to the here and now. "The ambassador anticipates our response." Nathan went back to the bed and carefully placed their daughter in the crook of the bed before we reached the Draxian border. They had given Lana the name Enra, which means harmony in Shindari, and is a word that exists in both of their languages. And making reference to a human astronomical constellation, asking, "What do you want?" Hilariana pondered the subject while seated next to them. The Draxians provide resources for safety and a location where she caressed their daughter's silver-white hair and said, Enra would be respected, but she would still be a political symbol. Nathan nodded in understanding of her hesitancy, saying, "And an asset is just a more decent version of what our government's intended. The substitute." "We vanish," Liriana remarked, looking into his eyes. "There are. We may simply be a family in autonomous colonies on the outer rim, where no single government has authority." The thought of abandoning the defense of strong allies to rely just on oneself was both horrifying and thrilling. Their daughter's future was at stake, and Nathan warned that it wouldn't be simple. At the very least, we would be fugitives. When has it been easy for us till the political climate changes? Lion grinned in response, and I joked that if you guessed my name, I would be chained to you. See where that got us, Nathan? The finest joke anyone could make was to chuckle quietly so as not to wake the now slumbering Enra. Eva played on me, but a soft tap briefly stopped it. Ambassador Thela came in at Nathan's. Despite the ship's artificial gravity being adjusted for human comfort, we accept her tall frame gracefully. "We will arrive at the border crossing in 6 hours, Adam," she declared. "Have you made up your mind?" Liriana and Nathan. They shared a glance and a wordless conversation, one of the unanticipated benefits of their soul binding. As Nathan affirmed, "We have, and we're appreciative for your offer, but we've chosen a different road." "If," the ambassador surprised. "May I inquire where you intend to go?" She disguised it well. "We believe it's better if you don't know," Liriana said tactfully after giving this some thought. Then nodding, "I understand. But I would like to help in any case." She created a little data crystal that includes new identities, untraceable coordinates, and credits to multiple separate worlds where my people have informal relationships. Nathan accepted the crystal with sincere appreciation and asked why it would be helpful to us in this way. Thela said plainly that what was done to Liriana without her full understanding was wrong. And because your daughter symbolizes the long-held belief among my people that our species is stronger when we work together than when we work alone, her eyes softened as she gazed at the sleeping baby, deserving of the opportunity to establish her own destiny. Following the ambassador's departure, they started getting ready for their new life, and Dr. Marina offered more. Despite his initial hesitation, Commander Valerian provided medical supplies and instructions for Enrus's peculiar physiology, provided strategic guidance on how to evade detection, which the Draxians have accepted. As Nathan packed their few possessions, he said, "Drop us near the Vidian Nebula. From there, we'll take a." Liriana nodded, her thoughts already racing as she was transported to the Outer Ring colonies. "We'll need to create a plausible yet unremarkable cover story with plans and contingencies. How about Nathan mentioned that 2 scientists fell in love after meeting on a research excursion, chose to live a more tranquil life away from the main systems after having a child? Completely false." Liriana smiled with amusement, "But I believe our true narrative is attempting to explain to Enra when she's older would be much more fascinating," Nathan said. "Well, love, your mother said that if I knew her true identity, she would have to marry me. Just think of my Lana's skin warmed with the memory of her sunset when you actually did it." As though sensing her, their laughing blended in the still room, providing a little respite from the uncertainty that lay ahead. Enra stirred and opened her eyes, those amazing eyes that held her father's shape and her parents' happiness. Hours after her mother's golden flecks, they stood in the shuttle bay of the Draxian ship and bid each other farewell. Ambassador Thala gave a modest gift as a parting gift to everyone who had witnessed their incredible adventure. Enra pendant, featuring an old Draxian blessing for journeyers. "May the stars guide your path," she continued politely, "and may you find the freedom to write your own story." Nathan held Liriana's hand as the shuttle broke away from the main ship, sending them into the unknown. Daughter slept soundly in their company, not realizing that her simple presence had already altered the trajectory of. Nathan whispered to interstellar relations, "Are you afraid?" As the stars, "Yes," she said, "but not of what lies ahead." Lyrian said, squeezing his hand, "I'm terrified that when I wake up, I'll realize that everything was a dream and that you never spoke my real name." When they discovered one another, Nathan leaned down and whispered in her ear her real name. This time, but 3 straightforward human words that were equally powerful caused Liriana's skin to flush with delight as she expressed the same sentiment. In her native tongue, the melodies streaming like the stars that encircled them as their shuttle vanished into the emptiness of space, carrying not only hope, for the future of their family, but the beginning of something bigger. Evidence that even the most disparate species may discover harmony together, transforming the unexpected into something fresh and lovely. It all started with a joke about a